Hello, everybody. Welcome in. Today, I predict the final scores of every game in Week 14 of the 2024 NFL season. Of course, before I do that, a quick recap of last week. How about a 16-0 week for yours truly? Not a single miss there. All green check marks, no red X's. Probably my biggest whiff on the week, quote unquote, even though I did not. Even though I predicted all of the correct winners, would probably be my pick for Raiders Chiefs, just because I thought the Chiefs would blow out the Raiders. They did not. More on that later, but I knew that the Steelers were better than the Bengals and would beat them. I knew the Eagles were better than the vaunted Baltimore Ravens and would beat them. I knew that the Lions and Bears would go to the wire, that the Bears would cover the spread. I knew that the Dolphins would not be competitive against the Packers. All around a great week for yours truly. Now, before we begin, I remind you to hit the like button if you enjoy the video and to subscribe to my channel for more content like this. And if you want to be notified of future content, please click the bell icon. You can choose personalized notifications or all notifications, whatever floats your boat. Let's begin. We begin with the Thursday night game between with Green Bay visiting Detroit. In case you didn't know, the NFC North is by a mile the best division in the NFL. Like, you look at a division like the NFC South and you see the team atop that division, which I believe is Atlanta. They have 6 losses. Well, the first, second, and third place teams in the NFC North have a combined 6 losses. It's a crazy strong division. So, of course, the Lions are the team everyone loves. They've looked like the NFC's juggernaut, but looked a little vulnerable last week against the Bears. Had it not been for Matt Eberflus's idiocy, I think that game would have gone to overtime and they could have potentially lost. The Lions won the first meeting. I think these teams are more evenly matched than the first meeting would suggest. I do like Green Bay to go into Detroit and win here. I like Green Bay 28-27 over the Lions. The Sunday 1 p.m. slate kicks off with Cleveland visiting Pittsburgh. 2 AFC North teams. 2 teams actually met. That met what will have been 18 prior to this in Cleveland, with the Browns winning 24 to over the Steelers. The Browns with Jameis Winston have looked better. By the way, as I'm recording this, the Browns are in the second quarter against Denver. So right now, as the time I'm recording this, I don't know if they're coming into this game 3-9 or 4-8. But regardless of what happens against the Broncos, that's not going to impact my pick for this game. I said in the video I made before the preseason what I think every team's worst game of the year is going to be. For the Browns, I thought it was going to be this one, considering they have not won in Pittsburgh in the regular season since I think 2003, maybe 2002. It's been almost 20 years. Pittsburgh, I think, is a real team. I don't know if they win a playoff game this year. I don't think they've won one since 2016 when Big Ben was the quarterback. They lost their last 3 playoff games with Ben. Lost one with Mason Rudolph this year. We'll see if they win one with Russell Wilson this year, but I digress. I do think Pittsburgh wins this game. The Steelers have a tendency to play down to inferior competition. We did see that against the Giants. We saw them play down to Indianapolis back in week 4. I do think they will play down to an inferior team in Cleveland like they did 2 weeks ago, actually, in the loss. But I do like Pittsburgh over Cleveland 24-19. The New York Jets are a colossal disaster. Do I think they would be better with Tyrod Taylor than they are with Aaron Rodgers? Probably. Are they ever going to bench Rodgers for Tyrod Taylor unless he gets hurt? Of course not. But as long as Aaron Rodgers is starting, this Jets team is going to win one more game, maybe 2 at most the rest of the way. They're one of the 5 worst teams in the NFL, and they do not know how to win. On the other side of the coin, the Miami Dolphins, obviously they got embarrassed by the Packers a week ago. They're the same team, in my opinion, that they've been the last 2 years with Tua healthy. They'll be overmatched against the elite teams in the league. You know, the Buffaloes, the Green Bays, the Baltimores, the Kansas Cities. But when they face a shitty team like the Jets, especially at home, they will annihilate them. Tua Tagovailoa, I'm pretty sure, is undefeated in his career against the Jets as a starting quarterback. I think he continues that undefeated streak here. The Dolphins need this game to stay alive in the playoffs, even though I don't think they'll get in. They need to win this game to stay alive. And for that reason, I like the Dolphins comfortably over the Jets, 30-10. Tampa Bay. So, beginning with the Ravens game, where Chris Godwin went out for the year, and the 3 games after that, they went on a 4-game skid, went from 4-2, looking like one of the best teams in the NFL, to 4-6, looking nothing like a playoff team. But they got Mike Evans back a couple weeks ago. Since then, they've won 2 in a row. They look like they're playing a lot better. Am I going to call them a real contender to win the NFC? No. Do I think they can win the NFC South? Absolutely. Because Atlanta's terrible. And I think because they're facing the worst team in the AFC, which is the Las Vegas Raiders. By the way, I understand that the Raiders went to the wire with the Chiefs last week. At this point, I think just about anyone's going to go to the wire with the Kansas City Chiefs. They never get blown out. They never blow anybody out. Honestly, if the Kansas City Chiefs and the New York Giants played tomorrow, and the Chiefs were favored by like 2 touchdowns, I honestly might pick the Giants to cover that 2-touchdown spread. So last week really means nothing as far as do I believe in the Raiders, which no, I don't. The Raiders defense is not good. Baker Mayfield, with Mike Evans back, should carve up that defense. Tampa Bay is a much better team than the Raiders. I like the Bucks 35-17. This next game is a real shitter between 2 teams in what I think is the worst division in the AFC, with Jacksonville visiting Tennessee. I'm not sure whether or not Trevor Lawrence is going to play in this game. Of course, he took the brutal shot from Aziz Al-Shire this past week. By the way, that's completely that hit was completely unacceptable by Aziz. He absolutely deserves a suspension, probably a multi-game suspension, definitely a fine. I don't know what the penalty is going to be, but it has to be huge. I really hope it's huge. But if I don't think Trevor Lawrence is that good, but is he probably the best player on the Jaguars offense? Probably. They're certainly not any good with Mac Jones. So whether Trevor Lawrence plays, whether Mac Jones plays, this Jags team it isn't good, although with Mac Jones they're a lot worse. Tennessee, on the other hand, is also awful. I know they beat the Texans a couple weeks ago. I think the Texans are pretty fraudulent last week. They got crushed by the Commanders. So this is a game between 2 of the worst teams in the NFL that I don't want to spend a whole lot of time talking about. Since Tennessee's at home, I'll go with them 20-15 over Jacksonville. Next one, I was a little surprised when the schedule came out that this was only a 1 p.m. game and not. It was never good enough to be a Sunday night matchup, but I thought it could at least be a Thursday night matchup or a Monday night matchup because, of course, the obvious storyline with Atlanta visiting Minnesota is Kirk Cousins playing in Minnesota for the first time since he left last season. So that's a storyline. Speaking of Kirk Cousins, he was awful last week, and he's really been awful the last 3 weeks. I saw a stat over his last 3 games, which have all been losses for the Falcons. He has no touchdown passes and 6 interceptions. He threw 4 last week against the LA Chargers. So right now, Atlanta, to me, I don't want to say they're a dead team walking, but they're pretty close to it. I don't think they do anything particularly well right now. I don't think their offense is that good. I don't think their defense is that good. Bo Nix put 38 on them a few weeks ago. I think that Sam Darnold, for all of his recklessness that we saw, obviously, with the Jets and in some spurts this year. I think that Sam Darnold has played well. I think he'll be able to move the ball on the Falcons defense. And Kirk Cousins I just don't, he can't move. And I don't, and he really can't put as much velocity on the ball as he used to. So I know the Vikings are the kings of playing in one-score games and winning those one-score games. I expect this to be a one-score game again this week, but I don't think it'll be as close as the final score indicates. I like the final score Vikings 28, Falcons 20. This next one is the very obvious choice for lock of the week, Philadelphia and Carolina. I know Bryce Young has played well the last couple of weeks. I thought he played well against the Chiefs a couple of weeks ago. But the Chiefs' defense has looked a little more suspect over the past few weeks. And as I said, the Chiefs seem allergic to blowing teams out. So while I think at home against some more vulnerable defenses, Tampa Bay last week, Kansas City down at second cornerback, I think it was able to play well in those spots. On the road against the best team in the NFL right now, or at least on the short list, that is not allergic to blowing teams out. I don't see it. Philadelphia right now is playing as well as anyone in the NFL. They're on an 8-game win streak. Just went into Baltimore. They're the second team ever, the second NFC team ever to defeat Lamar Jackson, the first to ever do it in the Charm City. So as I said, this is the obvious pick for lock of the week. Do I think the Eagles blow out the Panthers? I obviously do. I know a few weeks ago the Eagles were up 22-0 on the Jaguars and somehow made a meal of that game. I don't expect them to do that again. So for all these reasons, lock of the week, Philadelphia 41, Carolina 17. Following that, two of the dregs of the NFC, the New York Giants, who are winless at home this year, hosting the New Orleans Saints, who I think are 4-8, have fired their coach. I don't want to waste too much time talking about this one. As I said, the Giants are winless at home. I don't think they're going to finish their season winless at home. And I think if they're going to win at least one of their home games, this would probably be the one. So Giants 19, Saints 16. At 4:05 Eastern, two teams in the NFC West. I think the NFC West champion is eventually going to be one of these teams, Seattle and Arizona. I think this is a gotta have it for Arizona. They have one more loss than Seattle. They already lost to Seattle. If they lose this game, they'll have two more losses, and Seattle will have the head-to-head tiebreaker. I don't think we're going to get multiple playoff teams from this division. Last week, I thought there's a small chance we could, because I thought Washington might fall apart, but they seem to be back on track with their win against Tennessee this past week. Arizona is back at home. Even though they've lost two in a row, I'm not going to sell my stock on them. I still think they're at least a decent team, if not a good team. I like Arizona in a close one, 22-21 over the Seahawks. That tightens up the division race. America's Game of the Week on Fox. Buffalo Bills, LA Rams. So the LA Rams have been, I think, an up and down team this year. They had some injuries to their top two wide receivers, Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp. Those guys have come back. But even then, they've still been a little inconsistent. I don't think their offensive line's very good. They lost to the Dolphins at home. They got hammered by the Eagles a couple weeks ago. They faced another pretty major test at home this week against the Buffalo Bills, who are on a 7-game win streak since they made the trade with Cleveland for Amari Cooper. They have not lost, and they have scored 30 points in every game. The Bills are playing great ball right now. I do think they're better than the Rams, but I do think this is potentially a tough spot for the Bills. Flying, obviously, they're an East Coast team flying all the way west to play the Rams. I know they they had a similar flight earlier this year, back in October when they went to Seattle. They played pretty well there, but still, it's a long flight. I think that's going to be tough on them. I still think the Bills win this game. I think that they're going to be able to get after Matthew Stafford, who I think he's really good. He is old and not that mobile. And I think that Josh Allen, who in his career is undefeated against California teams, will keep that undefeated streak alive. I like the Bills 28-21 over the LA Rams. The big story out of the Chicago Bears this week is the firing of head coach Matt Eberflus. Much deserved, by the way. What an awful coach. I don't think anything needs to be said about his clock management last week at the end of the game against the Lions. As I said earlier, they had a chance to get to overtime against maybe the best team in the NFC. And, I think he forgot how many timeouts he had. Like, that's inexcusable. But I digress. However, I don't think Chicago is like the Raiders or the Giants. I think they're a legitimately talented team with a quarterback, Caleb Williams, who has played pretty well the last few weeks, and still has a pretty solid defense. San Francisco, on the other hand, to me, they look like they're dead at this point. They've lost by 25 points or more in 2 consecutive games. I don't know if that's ever happened to them under Kyle Shanahan. You'd probably have to go back to at least 2018 when they were one of the worst teams in the NFL to find the last time that happened. They are back at home this week. Last 2 weeks, they were on the road in just brutal conditions against teams conditioned to play in that weather. So I do think it will be an advantage for them playing at home this week. But right now, the Bears look like a better team than them. And the Bears are going to be are probably going to come out and play hard for their interim coach, Thomas Brown. I do like the Bears with the upset here. So I like the Bears 24-20. This next one on Sunday night, a really good one. The Kansas City Chiefs hosting the LA Chargers, the second meeting between these two teams. They met back in September, week 4 out in Los Angeles at SoFi Stadium in a game that the Chiefs won 17-10. They got down 10-0 early, and their defense pitched a shutout the rest of the way. That was also the game where the Kansas City Chiefs lost Rashee Rice for the year, and of course, they're still without him for this game. So, obviously, the Kansas City Chiefs have earned every iota of respect that they get. They're the 2-time defending Super Bowl champions. They know how to win games. That's been apparent all year. They're undefeated this season in one-score games. I think they have a streak in winning one-score games going back to last year. The Ravens, Bills, and 49ers playoff games last year were all one-score victories. The Bengals game a few weeks before that was a one-score victory. With that said, it became very clear to me last week that right now this Chiefs team is super beatable. So, obviously they did not blow out the Raiders like I thought they should have. But I wouldn't be as concerned with last week's performance. Say if they got down early, but then locked the Raiders up the rest of the way and controlled the game. Like if they got down 10-0 early, like they did against the Chargers back in September, but pitched a shutout the rest of the way and won 20-10, I wouldn't be that concerned. But when you go up 16-3 in the third quarter at home against the worst team in the NFL, you probably shouldn't lose that lead in 5 minutes against a quarterback that has the same first name as me that isn't very good. So that's a little concerning. Also, they were able to win, but that was in spite of the fact that the Raiders missed 3 field goals. And when they were in range, and I know their kicker to that point was really shaky, maybe he would not have made that kick, but they were at the Chiefs 32, and they fumbled a snap. That is not a forced error. That is not blocking. That is not like the Broncos game where you blocked the field goal. You did not force the Raiders to fumble. That was a completely unforced error. Obviously, the Chargers are a much better team than the Raiders. The Chargers had a lot of injuries in the Week 4 matchup. A lot of those guys should be back for this game. I do think the Chargers give the Chiefs their second loss. I'm going to call this the upset of the week. Chargers 24, Chiefs 23. And then lastly, on Monday night, the Dallas Cowboys host the Cincinnati Bengals. Both of these teams are having pretty disappointing seasons. The Cowboys, of course, lost their quarterback for the year a few weeks ago. But they are on a 2-game win streak against the Commanders and the Giants. Some are speculating, can they get in the playoffs? Do I think they have a chance? Hell no. As I look at their schedule coming up, they have a game in Philadelphia, which is as good as an automatic loss. Basically, I think that Tampa Bay is probably a loss if Mike Evans is healthy for that game. I think Baker will light him up. And even though this Bengals team is 4-8, and they have the same record as the New Orleans Saints, they're not an irredeemably bad team. They just don't know how to win. The Bengals offense is one of the best in the NFL. Their passing offense is one of the best in the NFL. The Cowboys defense is horrific. They've been especially horrific at home. So I think that Joe Burrow should light them up. Now, on the other side, the Bengals have the worst defense in the NFL. And do I think Cooper Rush could cook on them? Yeah. I think this is a game where the Bengals are up like 34-13 in the fourth quarter, and they give up a couple of late touchdowns that makes it come down to the wire. But Dallas blows their chance at the end, or Cincinnati just slams the door on them. Whichever one you think is more likely. So regardless of how it goes, I like Cincinnati 34-27. And that will be all for today. Once again, I remind you to leave a like if you enjoyed this video and to subscribe to my channel for more content like this. And if you want to be notified when future content drops, please click the bell icon. You can choose personalized notifications or all notifications, whatever floats your boat. Thank you again for tuning in, and I will see you again real soon.